Hello and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. It is my privilege to have Mia Umanos, CEO of Clickvoyant, here with us today to talk about marketing analytics, AI, all of the great things that the Clickvoyant tech does, as well as some good marketing discussions. Mia, pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Jason. Pleasure to be here.
And I've had the chance of seeing your product develop. I've had the opportunity to work together with the Expert Dojo Accelerator and see your growth overall, but thought we could familiarize the audience a bit more with Clickvoyant as well as yourself. What is your story? How did you develop Clickvoyant?
Oh man, this is really a product of, kind of like 15 years of frustration in the marketing analytics world. And, you can imagine if you start back in the day counting clicks in a closet somewhere when nobody cared about that kind of stuff, and you're on MySpace primarily, a lot's changed since then.
Oh,
You
yeah.
may have noticed. And it feels like a different job every year. So I remember, probably around 2006 or something, I had got my first like really big agency job at one of the Omnicom agencies. And, just stuff was changing all of the time. Facebook started to become something that wasn't just for college students. And, I told a director of analytics, like, I feel like this is, I'm here like taking on like Toyota and Nissan clients. And I just learned this yesterday. She said, that's kind of the life of being in analytics, is that you're constantly teaching the class while you're one chapter ahead. So GA4, for example, right? How many of us put that off?
Sure.
So yeah, just going through the process of, when you're have a career in consumer analytics or customer behavior, it's changing so frequently. New technologies are being introduced. Who knows which things will take and which won't, and you have to be that catcher of the data to be able to, tell these brands if Google Glass is going to be a thing.
I remember those discussions. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I think the manpower it takes, Jason, to get that stuff done it's incredibly large lift. And so, Clickvoyant is now playing in a place where we're experimenting with these different types of AIs that will ingest this data and kind of do these, table stakes analyses for us. But we're in a sea of a lot of AIs that are focused on upper funnel and media type of analysis. And that makes sense, right? Because if you're spending $10 million a month on advertising, you want to know where the heck your money's going.
Yeah.
But where there's a real gap is lower funnel customer analytics. What are people doing when they get to the site? And I can't tell you like how many brands are, I need more customers, so let's just buy more clicks. What channels are what channels are working? Should we be in TikTok? Should we be here? Should we be on these things? And yet there's this perfectly good ecosystem on a CRM, a website, that they're completely ignoring. How are people behaving with my first party data? And so that's where Clickvoyant really plays, is lower funnel. Like we have, connections to HubSpot, Shopify, Google Analytics to see what is going on at this bottom part of the funnel, and how are you, not only attracting customers, but how are you receiving them once they get to your doorstep? For whatever reason, that is something often ignored.
I couldn't agree more. And following along the journey with you here, 2006 sounds like tier one automotive, Nissan, Toyota, Omnicom agencies. I actually had a career in ad tech before this, agency side, but really on the sales side, working with those big four type agencies, and know the analytic conversations. Love the quote on you're acting as the expert on the book. You're giving the book report, but you're one chapter ahead. I think that sums it up perfectly. And that one chapter ahead, of course, is the only part of the book that's written in many cases. The rest of it is being developed in real time. But I think that's such a perfect way to put it. And then the way you're describing the funnel, taking audiences from stages of awareness, consideration, intent, conversion, in many cases, multiple conversions, and ultimately advocacy. I know our funnels are always trying to push towards that peer-to-peer marketing. You gave another great quote there of, we're attracting people to the door, but how are we receiving them and letting them in? And that game of chess and the strategy around it versus checkers, and thinking just by one touch point they're going to go through, and all the missed opportunities around that retargeting pool from the site, from the CRM. It is missed by so many expert marketers at top groups that have in-house marketing teams or other agencies. So I love that you guys focus at that stage.
Yeah, and it's even, I think that there's even a bigger gap, in and I hate to use the word funnel, but when you've been doing this for a long time, it's kind of
Of
muscle
course.
memory. But the evaluation consideration loop that people go in as they're trying to like figure out, whether you're trying to buy a pair of shoes and you want to get from this new hot designer, or you're evaluating what university to send your kid to. There's a stage where your constant research, you're bringing brands into your evaluation consideration set, and you're also eliminating people from your consideration set. And our answer to that in digital marketing right now is content marketing. Right. It's like, I want to be there for you. Our job is to, provide you everything that you need to know to help you make the decision to get you out of your loop and into the purchase trigger. But nobody's really measuring that. Again, it's like top of funnel, bottom of funnel. But like, how are you as a brand or a company, helping your customers get out of this loop in the evaluation phases? A lot of people don't really know, and it's kind of hard to set up a measurement strategy around a bunch of content pillars.
Sure. Sure. And content marketing is so broad. When I'm speaking with founders, the way each different group is tackling the topic, the concept varies drastically. I know our specialty, our focus is around advertising, and we built a content marketing department and then a creative studio, and all of these different specialists, from social to email to long form to distribution, because it allows the advertising to perform at a stronger level. And statistically, good content marketing and stack, higher conversion rate. So exactly what you're saying. But then which content marketing, I know what you mean about the word funnel, workflow, experience, adventure, are you taking the audiences down? How's it customized for them? How's it personalized for them? And what does this mean for the traffic sources? It's like you said, you're prospecting with TikTok, Snapchat, Reddit, Quora, any number of thousands of publishing websites or mobile apps. How do you determine what's appropriate for each of those audiences to create more of that native feeling and produce the numbers that you're talking about? Are you just setting these up to see quick results? Are you giving them the appropriate amount of time and traffic to get conclusive findings and data? All question marks for me when I'm evaluating a strategy.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about being the chapter ahead is that sometimes the chapter you're looking for hasn't been written, and you
Sure.
have to be the one to write that. So, there's been a few instances in my life where I was that person. Funny enough, I was talking to actually, this person who used to work for me is now the director of analytics at Accenture. And we talk about this project that we were on using Adobe Analytics before there was any attribution tool. So
Sure.
we were basically pulling in these systems and creating some metadata, attributing it inside the Adobe platform. And that work was then presented to, I think it was called E-Metrics at that time, but it was also it was like the DAA Association conference, and
Yeah.
Jim Stern was like, "This is so amazing." Now there's any number of attribution tools available, but in terms of content marketing, what's really cool is that we're devising these ways of kind of a similar situation. It's like, well, all of this content, it falls into categories, and what analytics people are just really great at seeing patterns, right? So it's like either you're doing all the rebuttals that you would normally get in your one-on-one founder sales. You have to have that content ready. Why this product? Why this product against other products? What makes this product better? How is this product going to improve your life? So blog post on every one of those things. Video, video even better. Webinars even better. And then you have this other category where it's more like helping somebody identify or articulate their problem. Right? It's like, can we clearly articulate the problem? Because people look at Clickvoyant and they're always like, so what is this, a dashboard? And I'm like, yeah, our homepage, like it's very clearly states in the hero, don't call it a dashboard. Because I think a lot of the analytics tools out there, they're really trying to solve for a lot of data collection or data visualization. And so that doesn't really solve the problem of our industry, which is actually communication of insights.
Yes.
And so, right. So
it's all about matter of what you do with it.
Exactly. Like anybody can turn on a dashboard, but most people are, not very literate in it. In data in general. So, just to come back full circle to content strategy, and like, I don't even have all of this built out, but when, we're up against a world of 4,000 dashboard softwares, I have to restate what the problem actually is in my content marketing. So, when I start to think about these pillars and these categories, now I'm in a place where we're designing the data, the metadata architecture for how to classify that. So that our product can then, measure content marketing more effectively and see if any of this matters a hill of beans to our actual subscriptions.
And you're so right. So many people hear dashboard and think that allows them to check out of, hey, I'm going to get the numbers, when really you have to have an algorithm going in of what are my KPIs, my key performance indicators, what am I going to be measuring, what ranges do each of those metrics need to be in. When I get the data from the dashboard, before we're even live, is the dashboard, or I should say the reporting, the metrics, the numbers, the findings, is it missing anything? Is it going to give me everything I need to make meaningful optimizations? What am I going to do when that data comes through? How am I going to communicate it to my team? What is the CFO going to say? He doesn't know what a CPM is, or an effective CPA, eCPA. How am I going to break this down at the high level and have the abilities to open up the hood and show where things are going? So many people want to look at the bottom line and think, oh, Facebook ads don't work, TikTok ads aren't working for me. And they're a week into the data, when really click-through rate, the cost per thousand impressions, the cost for the reach, the audience visibility is there, and you're getting the click-through rate, but something's off on the traffic. It's not fully converting. Could be the quality of traffic, could also be where you're taking them, the landing page, what follows from there. I'm trying not to say funnel per our discussion, but either way, what can we do to inspire more action, more immediacy? What could we do to provide more value from that content at those stages? Being able to articulate that and focus on what to do next versus, hey, this is a bad investment, scrap this channel, scrap this group, scrap this employee, as much as how to get any of these channels to work.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, you just rattled off like 20 metrics, right? And all of it, like equal sign, bad investment or good investment, and that's the problem. It's like we've developed these habits to say, okay, well, I, here's the question. The question is this a good investment or not? But those 20 metrics that you named off just in riffing are all valid. And this industry is caught to a space where it's like, let's start from the dashboard. What needs to go in there? This click-through rate, ROAS, blah, 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 impressions. But we need to start from the question. We need to start from the question first. And the
Yes.
problem with a dashboard is that it is often a manifestation of sometimes vanity metrics to a chief marketing officer
Oh yeah.
or a chief operating officer, CEO for that matter. The other problem with a dashboard is that it is once you get it set up, it's a pretty myopic view of what's actually happening, right?
Yes.
20 metrics to one problem question you just rattled off. If we put that in a dashboard, that dashboard's going to be this long, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to be like, this is too much information. So the process feels kind of broken.
It absolutely is. We have to go through it with clients on an ongoing basis, and some get it, and they have a background in advertising or managing advertising departments, so they can get a sense of it. But many of those founders still want to gravitate towards one metric as well too. It's like you said, they're not looking at the 20. For me, I try to break it down to an algorithm of three: the impressions, clicks, and conversions. But then I want to compare it against 4 to 10 audiences, 2 to 6 creatives. I want to find pockets of performance. I want to see what's really working, what could be phased out. Where you show it to the wrong team member. That CFO says, "Wait, we spent this much, and this was our return on ad spend. Cut it." When that's simply not how you manage these campaigns to a point of effectiveness. It actually ends up turning into a bigger loss in many cases, because if you're able to crack that code, you have that traffic source, you have that utility, you could scale it, you can continue it. Where if you just cut it off, everything is a loss at that point. And if you want to relaunch that channel, you're starting from ground zero or worse. So yes, I know those 20 lines of data can be overwhelming. Even to people who get it, they often want to focus on one. You're lucky if you get three.
Right. And, and the truth of that is, for every 20 metrics that you're looking at, there are 200 others that have insight in it. And so that's where, I don't know if you've heard this term, like measurement strategy. Like, I know clients ask a lot, like, what is our measurement strategy for this? And, the exercise of a measurement strategy, at least, when I was a director of analytics, was always, well, for awareness, we're going to pick these metrics. For engagement, we're going to pick these metrics. We're going to pick these metrics. And then we would build a dashboard off of those. And then we would never look at the dashboard again, because at the end of the day, the dashboard was actually creating more questions than it actually answered. So like you said yourself, like, I actually like to dig in deeper. I like to go take a look at the segments. I take a look at, it might be the buy, it might be the landing page, and all of that work, the analysis part, is what humans are doing right now. So that's why you pay $120,000 annual salary for somebody, which, by the way, nobody can get. I mean, if you're Toyota Lululemon, that's one thing. But if you're a small, enterprise, a manufacturer, forget about like all these Shopify store owners who even make like 5 million ARR. They're not getting an analyst. And so, Clickvoyant is intended to be that role, to step in, to say, listen, we're not going to try to replace a dashboard. If you want a dashboard that's important, I have a dashboard on my car. I do kind of need that. So you need to be able to drive on the road, but at the same time, it's not telling me how the optimal performance of my engine is going. And so, I think that our focus is to gather all the data do all the statistical modeling inside the platform so that it can level up. Here are your opportunities to find more customers today. These DMAs, these landing pages need a little fixing. This money actually, or this advertising dollars are not doing anything either for your conversion lower funnel or mid funnel, right? And give you just like, here are the 10 things that you need to do over 30 days to get $1 million in incremental revenue. That's what Kate and I really believe insights should be. And it's rough because, have you ever clicked on the Google? Am I going to shut on Google right now? Like one of our main data sources, but have you ever clicked on the Google Insight automated insight widget inside Google?
Oh yeah. Are you talking about on the banner itself or inside Google Ads?
Oh, I'm talking about inside Google Analytics. It'll say, it says something like
Sure.
automated insights or insight panel.
Yes.
And those insights are always saying, people in Tennessee went up 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, what they almost always say is, you need to increase your budget.
Right. Helps their tool a bit. But yes, they are still talking about getting more data and are not wrong.
Right. And so, when you're telling a marketer or business owner that an insight is something that says bounce rate went up, it's not helping the case that we actually don't know what an insight is in the whole industry, right? Like, what should it be? Right. And for Kate and I feel very strongly that an insight that comes from data should be something that tells you how to get more customers, how to make more money, or how to save money doing those two things. And if we look at all of the, we're launching in the Shopify store, and, Kate and I are trying to figure out, like, well, what do we say? Like, what do we say what this is? Because it's not a dashboard. And if you look at if you Google analytics inside the Shopify store, every tool says we give you insights. And if you scratch below the surface and you log into this, it's like, oh, we give you a dashboard. Oh, so what is an insight? Nobody really knows. And I think that's where we're kind of putting a stake in the ground.
I think that's excellent, especially applying AI. The first thing that comes to mind for me is programmatic advertising, where you're setting up AI software to optimize advertisements beyond what the human mind, the human eyes can do. I could probably tell you 50 different lines of targeting filters. They can apply millions of lines of targeting filters. So I've known since I started using the tech around 2014, 2012, that it could go beyond what a human optimizer can do. It still helps if you have somebody behind the wheel and determining what the machine's doing. But I've really experienced the value of AI firsthand from that. And that's what I hear when I am looking at your campaign analytics, measurements, and having tools do this. And like you mentioned, a lot of groups don't even have a fully committed team member to take on the communications, to look at the insights. So with your tool set, giving the ability to point out areas where you could see more customer acquisition, see more revenue coming in. I mean, it's huge. And again, it's going to point out things that simply don't come to mind, nor would an individual have the time to communicate because of all the findings it would be able to extrapolate.
Absolutely. I think you've really touched on something that a lot of people in our industry are a bit afraid of. If an AI can publish social media posts for me, what am I going to do as a social media? What about my work as managing a social media content calendar? If an AI can write the ad copy, what is my job as a copywriter? What is my job as an analyst? What is my job as a media planner? And I think that, first of all, people with the knowledge that we have are in such short supply that if there are any AIs that can help us be more efficient,
Mhm.
to take on more clients than we can take today, that helps solve an immaturity problem, right? This quote about I can't remember who said it. It was like a car manufacturer, like, oh, I know that half my ads are wasted. I just don't know which half.
Yep.
Still true, man. It's
Yep.
still true for many companies who can't
Mhm.
afford a Jason Fishman, who can't afford a Mia Umanos. They
Mhm.
still don't know.
Mhm.
Just throwing it out into the ether and praying that the algorithms figure it out, but without somebody who's kind of interpreting
Sure.
it for you, it's hard to know.
It's all showing up in the other category on Google Analytics, and
You just
they're
made me
just knowing
laugh
what
spit.
channels aren't producing for them. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Those Mad Men era quotes. I don't want to misquote. I don't know if it was Ogilvy, but those are still very true today. And it is really all about what you do with that data that comes from good communications, that comes from strong findings. So even having, an analyst behind the wheel, this tech is still something that I know firsthand that they seek out. And for some of the biggest e-commerce companies, I know in-house, we have we have dashboards that we communicate to clients, but we're still always looking for more of what's ticking. And I love how you point out that there's actually far more going on. There's 200 different metrics that you can have findings from and be able to work from there. And how are you guys presenting the data? Because I know you have a very strong format for that. What gets actually submitted to the user?
Oh man, this is what I get really excited about. So, I came from the JWTs and Omnicoms of the world. And so our end deliverable was always a deck. It's always a presentation to upper management or your client. And that actually is what Clickvoyant delivers. So, we ingest all this data. We do the statistical modeling. What has a 95% significance is the decision maker for what goes on to the presentation. So the presentation, basically, soup to nuts, like headlines, charts, copy, speaker notes, everything is built by our software. The intention there was to allow somebody who might not necessarily be trained in statistics or data modeling to be able to deliver this analytics presentation with the karaoke notes. So, like, for example, we talk a little bit about the middle funnel. And so if a company's tracking is sound, with all your content and your content strategy, your blogs, your webinars, um, Clickvoyant will then do a correlation analysis between all that middle funnel activity and the ultimate end goal. If somebody is not um, conversant in statistics, the speaker notes say why correlations are important, what the strength of the correlation is, and how much money is to be had if you were to improve some of these other middle funnel or increase middle funnel activity. That would be worth, $200,000 in 30 days. So, as a director of analytics, these are the words that we would put into our junior analyst's mouth, who are now directors at Cardinal Path and Bounteous and Lululemon. If I
Yeah.
look at everybody who ever worked for me, they're all like directors of analytics now.
Funny how that works.
Well, you know what? An analyst, every good analyst knows that the best way to increase their salary is by skipping. is job skipping. I mean, you get like
Yep.
an average like 20% increase every time you do, which is why the churn rate's like 12 to 18 months
Mhm.
on that talent. So that was another pain point that we're trying to solve with this
It does make it
robot.
tough. Yeah, and the robot is welcomed for that reason. It does make it tough on everyone when that skipping occurs. and you're more or less going to a new starting ground, if not starting back over with the next team members and training. And I've seen it happen with platforms that we work with and client complaints around it. I've seen it happen with clients and their internal teams. We've had it happen to a small degree, but have had it happen. So absolutely. And it's like you said, though, good talent is that valuable because the smallest changes could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've seen it mean millions of dollars in optimizations, in the results that optimizations produce. And that's what's so fascinating about our industry, about our space. That's the impact you guys are making, of course, having these 2 millimeter changes in some cases that produce millions of dollars in advertising, sales, in valuation growth based on the users coming on board. So, it's very clear the utility that you guys play.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry about my dog. She used to be an apartment dog in Chicago and was on the seventh floor and didn't really get to see anybody. Now she's living on the first floor in Colorado and just loves barking at like random bags on the street, mailmen, anything that's relatively suspicious looking. Um,
Dog's life.
she's living her best life now.
There you
But
go.
yeah, I mean, the talent churn, it's not a problem that's going to go away for any time in the foreseeable future. I
Mhm.
mean, we went in 2020. So, I'm sure this infographic, but it's like all of the different marketing technologies over the last year. So it's like went from like 100 to 200 to 5,000. In 2020, that was 8,000 MarTech technologies tracking customer behavior. The metric in 2021 is more than 9,000. So while these like technologies and data collection systems are growing, we're not growing data analysts that fast. And so that $200 billion gap, it's going to continue to grow. And I think it's not sustainable to think that we're going to keep teaching people. I mean, we're going to continue to see analysts leave. And so, you know, Hawk Media actually invested in us,
Hmm.
and their process is to give these marketing technology tools to their teams to see if they like to use it. And the teams that really kind of we're just the teams that were just like, where did you get this analysis? I need more of this in my life. It was the strategy team. So
Mhm.
people who are working on digital strategy usually don't have access to the analytics people because the analytics people are paid for by like the biggest clients and they have this many billable hours. They just can't get these kinds of insights. And so, this really opening our eyes to who the user of Clickvoyant actually is. And by enabling strategic managers or digital managers, and there's so many different growth hackers, so many different job descriptions or job titles that would need this type of insight. Um, it's kind of filling that talent gap with a new kind of analyst, somebody who is unencumbered by the need for R or Python or even somebody. You don't need to know how to do a pivot table, right?
Mhm.
But you, as a digital strategist, can come in, get these insights, know what the implications are, and know how to sell that upward to the client or to your chief marketing officer. It's basically somebody who is conversant in data, but also critically thinking, strategic thinker. And let's face it, a good orator helps. So if you have those skills, it's kind of pushing into a new kind of analytics job.
Mhm. And like you said, having a digital strategist, a strategist as a whole, be able to have these type of learnings from the data without a background in some of the more technical practices around that, but being able to walk away with the same real insights, I'll call them actionable insights that they can use. And Want to elaborate on that further? Potentially have some recommendations for listeners. We have a lot of founders that listen in, marketing professionals, groups that work in the VC community as a whole. How can they test out their own data analysis? How can they apply, whether it's findings from Clickvoyant or just in general? Well, what could they test out for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the first part of testing any of these tools is to have a critical eye and an awareness of what your current reporting says to you, and
Hmm.
really just going back to the drawing board on what it is that we need to know, especially if I'm a startup company, right? Like, you're so tight on resources, you can't afford to make a misstep. And so using Clickvoyant is very good, like low power of the funnel. But there's so many media tools out there. I was like looking at Alembic, Morpheo. These are great tools that are also helping to understand your upper funnel ecosystem, but then also diving deeper into, I think, what the nature of your CRM systems look like. I mean, this is probably something that founders looking at all the time, because I know I am. Like, what's in the pipeline, who's closing, what's the metadata around who closes and who doesn't. um, but I mean, just taking that, the test and optimize approach, is that you have to just start with the data that you have, finding these actual insights, not metrics, but actual insights in the data that you have, and start enriching that knowledge with the sort of optimize mentality. Like, I'm going to experiment. I've observed this in my data. I've observed that these types of people convert faster than these types of people. And now I'm going to, I'm going to start testing messaging, talking to this type of person in my social media, in my content marketing. Let's see how that does. And the critical piece, Jason, is actually knowing how to collect the data
Hmm.
throughout those tests. Like, how am I going to design it? Be very methodical. And I think that that's a pretty hard, getting into the nitty gritty for a lot of founders, especially. But I mean, luckily, we're founded by two data analysts, so we're collecting it all. But if you do those painstakes by making sure that your data is in place, you're going to learn and scale a lot faster.
And what if optimization is required? What if, let's say that the data is not where it needs to be right out of the gate, and performance needs to increase accordingly? Do you have any tips towards optimizing? I find most campaigns don't hit their key metrics right out of the gate, and or they do but are looking to sustain it and or scale. What are tips towards optimizations that you have?
Sure. Well, in terms of optimizing the data, I would definitely send you to clickvoyant.com and
Mhm.
download our free Google Tag Manager containers, because in there it has all of the micro conversions that I'm talking about. Like, when we're looking at upper funnel, then if you need help implementing, call us. We have onboarding services that can help you do that. So that's one, getting the data to be optimized so that you can understand what's going on. And then, making sure that all of the activities that you're doing, whether it's content marketing or media buying, that all of that data is not going into the other category, but actually
Yeah.
going into the categories that you need to see. And then download the free trial of Clickvoyant, turn it on, see what it looks like. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times, the way that we analyze attribution. So this is not the way that we used to do this back in the day when we presented eMetrics. What we're doing now is doing a bathtub model. So that is to say, of everybody who converted on my site, whether it's make a purchase, sign up for something, or download my software, um, it's basically looking at which channels and which referrers are doing the most to introduce new customers, which ones are working the touch points in the middle, in the nurture phases, and which ones are actually doing the closing.
Mhm.
So I'll tell you right now, it's almost always email. So,
Email.
see, it just, I mean, I think it really depends on life cycle marketing, or what the buyer life cycle is and the length of the cycle. For us, it's email.
Of
But,
course.
like being able to attribute, 40% of that conversion to who introduced you and who closed the deal helps us understand where to invest our dollars, and, also based on the priorities that we have right now.
Mhm. Also, which role each channel plays, because in my experience, it's usually multiple touch points. So, exactly as you're saying, maybe you're prospecting with ads, maybe you're getting a lead form completed. Maybe that's the conversion you should be playing for and going off in app data in many cases, as there's limitations for what's being tracked outside of apps with some of the iOS changes and things along those lines. Additional rules that are coming. So really great for you to point out email there, and it is looked at as a top digital channel, if not the top digital channel, for a reason. And what about scaling? What about optimizations going well? It's now working. Doing it at higher levels, higher capacities carries its risk. Any examples, success stories, or just overall tips towards scaling?
Honestly, this is where I just listen to your podcast because we are in scaling mode right now. And I think, the scaling piece is what we're going through. I would say that our main pain points are human resources.
Sure.
I mean, we can that this is, to me, um the most interesting pain point, because with I mean, I thought, like, honestly, that the biggest pain point to growth was going to be capital, right? It costs money to grow this quickly. And so I got to get the cash in, or I got to, do some like working capital, I don't know, like we're looking at all of that stuff. It's actually, not as hard to find capital, whether it be debt financing or fundraising. It's not as hard to do that as it is to scale the team and to do that quickly. And so, one thing that another founder told me, from this company called Compliant, Shiloh was like, you know what? I wish I would have started hiring a year before I needed these roles. Just getting your network out there. And so, Kate and my favorite thing is, we love to learn from other founders. And so we are now, starting to pull together our bench of people, just like, what are we doing? Getting them to believe in the vision. Who do we really like? And Kate and I say, from here on out, I mean, we've been really scrappy with our startup, but now that we're getting in a position to scale past 1 million ARR, we're starting to say, okay, everybody's smarter than us. We need to recruit everybody smarter than us in revenue ops, in engineering. Like, we're starting to get to know, who do we like, who do we want to bring on, and this is probably 6 to 8 months out from when we actually are going to need to hire.
I agree with you. Talent acquisition is a whole nother obstacle, especially getting the right talent, those that aren't just skipping, those that can actually show measurable growth towards the organization. So really glad you pointed that out. When it's all working, you got to be ready to activate your operational scaling plan as well there too. And it's all about the team. It's all about good people. That is the difference from good to great, right? So I like that point.
Yeah, what, one thing I've been doing that's been a pretty interesting reaction is, actually, everybody that I talk to that I really want to bring onto the team at some point in the future, they're now on my investor distribution list. Just, hey,
There you
we're
go.
raising this round, like, we just won the, Fearless Fund grant, and we're now a Tory Burch Fellow. So,
Wow.
like, just keep your eye on us.
That is amazing to hear. The talent list, now the investor list. Love how you have all these great updates. Tory Burch Fellow, wasn't familiar with that one. Awesome. And the grant, everything about it. Mia, really enjoying our conversation. We are coming to an end. And before we wrap, wanted to ask if there's any final thoughts, notes that you wanted to leave the audience with.
Um, Well, I mean, knowing that your audience is so diverse, I will say this: the lack of the deficiency of data analytics talent in the industry, it hurts everybody in the startup community. If only 30%, if there are still 30% open roles in data analytics at Fortune 500 companies, everybody else doesn't have this kind of talent. And so part of the reason why Clickvoyant exists is to help companies like your audience do what they need to do to grow, like, to get the insights that they need to grow their company. So I would say, don't put it off. Don't feel like I'm this is dirty data, I'm just going to go with my gut. It is always better to get somebody or something or some robot with statistics on top of your data, so that again, at this stage, we cannot afford to make any missteps. So having the statistical modeling, it's both mission driven and I would just say we're also mission driven in that way. So don't put it off. Get your data clean, and start to benefit from some of these AIs that are coming in market.
Don't put it off. Positive changes can produce thousands, millions more in revenue and or users. And the lack of focus can mean the difference of removing a channel or even failing across the board. So I
Oh
echo
yeah.
that. And me, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I'm sure our listeners are getting a lot out of it as well. I have notes I'm going to share with my team. If anyone would like to get in further contact with you, what is the best way to do so?
They can email me directly. I'm really putting my email out here. Mia at clickvoyant.com. And there's also a button on our website that says meet with a coven that actually comes to me.
There you go. There you go. And highly encourage audiences to do that. Very kind and bold of you to put your email address out there, Mia. And yeah, you're a wealth of information. I think anyone who reaches out is going to, really get a lot from that discussion and chat. And want to thank everybody for tuning in. Mia, thanks again. This has been great.